A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers, Chandigarh edition, and today is 14th of December. Now, before starting, let us quickly look at the news topics. And one of the key takeaways from today's news is the outcomes of the COP28, which was taking place in Dubai. So we have the outcomes that are scattered across the newspaper. So one we get it on the front page itself, then we have in the middle page, and then at the last ending, explained section. I have summarized these in a handwritten note and I have shared this on the Telegram. The link is always there in the description box. And besides this, I'm sharing these current affairs questions as well. Okay, so this is the most important topic. Besides global partnership on artificial intelligence, which was taking place in Delhi, has concluded. So we have a Delhi declaration. It's very vague, but we get some of the key takeaways on AI regulation. That is a 29 member alliance. So that we get over here. Okay, so that's it actually. Then we'll keep covering it from the news itself. Now coming to the first news. So the first I'm discussing this and then I'll cover this one. So first one is with regards to United Kingdom's migrant scheme, which is nothing but the Rwanda plan that we are hearing in the news. Rwanda plan. So this plan has been approved in their legislature, UK legislature. What is the Rwanda plan? Migrants that are coming to UK, right? So migrants that are coming to UK for various reasons, they are refugees basically. They are being deported to Rwanda in Africa. Here, Rwanda is located over here. So they are being deported over here. From here, the assessment would be done if these people really required refugee status or not, if should the UK government take care of them or not, or should they be deported back to the place from where they have come. For example, India was recently declared as a safe state. So that means that people who have illegally come into UK, mainly from the English channel, they will be sent to Rwanda and from there they'll be sent back to India. So that is the Rwanda plan. Refugees will be put over here itself. Now, why is the UK and Rwanda doing it? So one is that UK, obviously, it has good facilities, infrastructure, etc. A lot of people want to come over here. It is putting a pressure on the resources of the UK government. It is changing the demographics. People are not happy with that. And thereby they are thinking at an alternative. But they have to fulfill the commitment of refugees and the human rights, etc. So they have made a tie-up with the Rwanda government. They said, you want money? We don't want people. You take care of the people, we will give you funding. Rwanda plan in short. Now, of course, one dimension of international ethics can also be seen over here. Right? We can look at it from that perspective also. Next, we see the Gaza violence. It is taking place. Israel faces isolation, global isolation, Biden criticism. And Biden is the one who is supporting Israel in its violence against Gaza. Okay, so let me briefly tell you. So the matter is, of course, gone to the United Nations Security Council, but here it was vetoed. Multiple attempts were made to call in for a resolution seeking immediate ceasefire and condemnation of violence, but that did not take place because of the veto of the P5 member USA. Okay. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres was not happy with this. He said this is unacceptable. So the matter has gone to the UNGA. Actually, multiple times it has gone to the UNGA and they have voted on this. India has not been voting on this matter. Now, most recently, UNGA has voted anonymously. About 153 countries have voted against Israel and they want immediate ceasefire. Although there is not much bearing on Israel or the US on that matter, but it reflects what is the global sentiment and reflects the unpopular sentiment against the Israel and also the US. So this puts pressure on Israel and Biden administration to stop this violence. Okay, now yesterday I told you this reminds me of the concept of United for Peace resolution. So when UNSC fails in its endeavors, the matter can be sent to the UNGA. where they decide on that issue. And that is known as the United for Peace Resolution. Okay, and one important takeaway is we see this change in stance of India. India previously has been abstaining from voting. India has not been voting on this issue, mainly because India has to balance its interests. So one is interest of Israel and other one is the interest of Arab nations. Palestine is Arab, right? So Arab sentiments are affected. So India has been trying to balance this over here. Now, in the recent times, India has voted against Israel on this resolution for immediate ceasefire. So this reflects a change in stance, a more decisive action from the Indian administration. Okay, next we move on. Nation's first strike first ever deal to transition away from fossil fuel. So key takeaways which are marked in different colors, green, blue, and this pink, magenta, whatever color that is. So first is that renewable energy will be tripled, right? It will be tripled by 2030. So that is the goal. Previously, we have studied that about 7 billion tons of carbon emissions can be stopped because of that. By the way, India has installed capacity of 42%, and India had made a commitment of 50% renewable energy by 2030. So this the goal has to be tripled. Next, doubling the current annual rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030. Energy efficiency targets by should be doubled by 2030. And the last one that is mentioned is promote zero and low emission technologies. Right, so that is the three outcomes that are mentioned over here. I think I'll do the entire thing over here itself, and then I'm not discussing it further. Okay. Now, if you look at these arrangements over here that have been mentioned, this is overall a compromise over the issue of one of the issues was that coal-based power plants should not be new installation should not take place. In fact, we should see a phase down. So no new installation of coal-based power plant should take place. International community was working on that, especially the global north. India is heavily dependent on coal-based power plants. About 70% of energy is coming from here. Okay. So this has been diluted in, and we have mentioned this, zero and low emission technologies should be promoted. So this is actually a watered down demand from what was earlier placed. So no new coal power plants. So this wasn't acceptable to India, China, etc. So thereby zero and low emission technologies. The agreement that we have now, it says accelerate efforts towards phase down. Accelerate efforts towards phase down. It doesn't say phase down. It says make efforts to phase down. Make more efforts to phase down. Okay. So that's it. With regards to the phase out of fossil fuel, otherwise, obviously that has not been covered. That has been dropped. So we had to do this because 80% of the emissions, which is leading to global warming, is coming from the fossil fuels. Now, very quickly, so three things that we discussed were renewable energy goals to be tripled, double annual rate of energy efficiency by 2030, promote zero and low emission technology. Right, so these were the things. Now, besides this, we hear about the Laws and Development Fund. Laws and Development Fund. So this was operationalized and $800 million of funding was received. Right, whatever damages that take place because of climate change, etc., to help the middle income and the low income economies to to sustain over that issue, be resilient. Okay. Then another interesting development was global goal on adaptation. So this was accepted. Global goal on adaptation. But no financial have been mentioned over here. No targets, no financials have been targeted for this thing as to how the adaptation would be done. Now, adaptation thing is important because we know that climate change is overall inevitable. Global warming will take place. There is water stress, there is heat stress that is taking place. So resources for adapting to the new realities, that is what we are discussing. One important miss was no mention of methane emission cuts. No mention of methane emission cuts was made because after CO2, methane is the single most contributor, and the global warming potential of methane is 80 times more than that of carbon dioxide. Right, so these were the important takeaways. Now, what was needed really? What needs to be done? So, it is needed that the emissions should be brought down 43% emission cuts by 2030. 43% of 2019 emissions, it should come down 43% of 2019 by 2030. By the year 2030, we need to reach this target if we want to limit the global warming to if we want to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius of pre-industrial level. Now, this means that we have to, year on year basis, we need to have emission cuts of 8 to 8.5% annually, right? You just do 8 into 5, you get 40, right? So around this figure we will get. Next, we need financing also to deal with this issue. So according to IMF, the World Economic Outlook, we need $5 trillion of climate finance between now and 2030. So these are the important elements associated with COP28. So we have discussed the objectives and the compromise, then what was needed, right? So everything is summed up. The summary is there on the Telegram channel, a simple handwritten note. No, this was a state news. I was interested, so that's why I've highlighted it. Crop residue burning must stop. Judicial monitoring needed to check pollution, says the Supreme Court. Right, now judicial monitoring will take place. Okay. Yeah, so this was the one from where I took the data of 43% from 2019 levels by 2030. From 2019 levels by 2030. Next, we come to the editorial opinion section. So the main theme is about the criminal code, the new bills that have been introduced to replace the old criminal laws, the IPC, CRPC, and the Indian Evidence Act. Right. So this and one criticism over here is mentioned over here. I'm just going by the editorial, going by the simple logic that this is a summary of this one is a summary of what should be mentioned over here and there. So this is one thing, and then we have the fiscal position of the state governments. Overall, we get an idea. So let's cover the first one now. So as I have already told you, the criminal bills that were there, the IPC, the Criminal Procedure Code, and the Indian Evidence Act have been replaced. A bill has been brought in to replace this with Indian names actually. Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita, which is basically Criminal Procedure Code, and the Bharatiya Sakshya Bill, which is Indian Evidence Act. Right. So first of all, the Indian names, and they are saying that we are reforming these laws because these were during the Macaulayan period, right? 1850s, these laws had come in, so we have to reform this. A lot of things time has passed since then. Plus, these depict the colonial mindset, the colonial legacy is there. We need to have indigenous laws. So, a narrative of indigenization has been used, which is absolutely fine. Okay, now these bills have been introduced. This editorial is critical. So the first thing that they say is that opposition is not happy. They say that first, it should be understood that yes, we need to rationalize these laws, which was very much required. Incorporate the Supreme Court judgments on various laws. Reforms have been made, so that had to be done. Now, opposition is not satisfied with this. They say that not enough analysis has been done. Not enough discussion has been done. In fact, the analysis that was done, review that was done in closed door meetings rather than in the Lok Sabha properly. These are important bills which should have been discussed. And the expert committee which was formed to look into this issue, there is a concern about the membership. They say that mostly aligned with the ruling party, so that diverse opinion is not represented. Now, some of the key takeaways that we get. So previously, we had separate laws for terrorism, corruption, and organized crime. All state governments had their own different laws for organized crime. Terrorism, for example, we had the Prevention of Terrorism Act, POTA, TADA. Then eventually we had the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So now these have been included in the ambit of ordinary criminal law, which means IPC. Now, one big concern over here is previous IPC provided for a police custody of 15 days. This has been extended to 90 days. A Cambodian government had 15 days of this thing, a foreign government. The indigenous one is saying 90 days of police custody can be there. So time limit has been expanded. And this raises concerns about the legitimacy, about the issue of abuse of power, misuse of power also that can take place over the time. So all that. Okay. Next. Sedition, criminalization, homosexuality, adultery, which is actually the Victorian era law. Those have been repealed. And but interestingly, the sedition, which was challenged at the Supreme Court multiple times, and Supreme Court had to clarify sedition law. So this sedition law has been changed to Rajdroh, from Rajdroh to Deshdroh actually. Right. So it has been, but overall the contents still remain the same. So the problem was that anybody who criticizes or has dissent could be put into the jail, and sedition means up to without warrant one could be in the jail. So that was an issue, and for about I think 2+ years it could be done. But so it was a serious problem. But the Supreme Court said there has to be an element of incitement of violence, not merely overthrow the government, because you can overthrow the government by legitimate means also. So it should have an element of incitement of violence. But we normally see the police invoking sedition law quite liberally when there is no element of incitement of violence also. Then there is a total omission of Section 377 of IPC, which was recently decriminalized. Not so recent, also decriminalized. It dealt with the issue of homosexuality. It criminalized homosexuality. So a particular portion of Section 377 was read down by the Supreme Court or struck down by the powers of judicial review. But the problem is that entire revocation of Section 377 means that since the rape laws are gendered, right, women-centric, so the issues of abuse with respect to the men, so that is not taken away. I don't expect an analysis, but since you would want to cover this, so that's the only reason. Next, state of finances. A state of finances or just state finances, that would be better heading, right? Okay. Fiscal position of states have improved, however, they must guard against imprudent scheme. Long story cut short, fiscal deficit of the states have come down from 4.1% of GDP in 2021 to 2.8% in 2022-23, and this year it is projected to be 3.1%. So this is lower than the limit of 3.5% for the year. So it is lower than what was anticipated. It is at 3.1%. So states as a whole, okay, we're talking about that. Now, what was the target? Yes, we are saying it has come down, which is a good thing, but what was the target actually? We get the target from the 15th Finance Commission, which says that the union government should bring down the fiscal deficit to 4.4% of the GDP, right? So we have it for this, and the goals for fiscal deficit limit for the state is 4% in 2021, 3.5 for 2022-23, and 2023-26 it is 3%. So we are around that mark. The limit is 3.5%. It is mentioned over here. We are below that. Okay. Now, one of the reasons is, of course, when we look at fiscal deficit, it is the difference between the expenditure and revenue. Money that is coming in, money that is going out. So it says the healthy rise in revenue receipts. That is one of the reasons. Further, the state's revenue expenditure has decelerated in favor of capital spending. So capital spending is growing, which is good. And one of the reasons could be that the center has given 50-year interest-free loan to the state governments. Right. Probably the loans are actually masking the fiscal deficit situation. That could also be there. The other thing could be that we are looking at a state figure holistically, right? There are multiple states. Every state has its own perspective. We are looking. So certain states, the fiscal condition may be good. Certain, it will be very bad. It is quite likely. So that may be the case, which is the case actually. Some states continue to have significantly higher debt and deficit levels in deficit levels. Now, the populist schemes like old pension scheme has been many state governments, especially the Congress, the non-BJP ones, they're moving towards old pension scheme. So old pension scheme, new pension scheme, basic thing was that new pension scheme is based on for government servants, mainly for government servants. So they get pension according to their contribution. Old pension scheme was 40% of last drawn salary. Right. So if moving to old pension scheme will not be fiscally sustainable. Recently, there was an interview by Raghuram Rajan, former governor. So he also criticized the governments for moving to state governments for moving to old pension scheme. Then we are having the run up to elections, farm loan waivers, and all those demands would be there, right? More subsidy spends. So that's a matter of concern. Power play in Ladakh. Yesterday we covered Ladakh. The people want full statehood, right? So in the context of abrogation of 370, now they're looking at this possibility. Okay, one good news from the economy section. Oil is at 75.59. Yesterday to 76. What I don't fail to understand is that since oil is a major source of our import, which is around 2 lakh crores, 2 to 3 lakh crores, this thing is not getting affected. I'm wondering why. 83.4, this is station, because if our imports overall, the value of imports should also come down because oil per barrel is coming down. So why is this not moving? It should move in some time. Okay. Moving to the next article. Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, which basically looks at regulation of the artificial intelligence, more so in the context of the new age generative AI, right? So first time the meeting has taken place post generative AI, like ChatGPT, Google Bard, all. So they have emerged in the scene, the issue of deepfakes, etc. Right. So they were sitting in Delhi and they had a Delhi declaration. The key outcome is known as the Delhi Declaration. It was more or less accepted. Okay. You need to read about GPAI. It is 29 member country. I have shared the link of GPAI yesterday, the about us page about this. I want you to read that, right? So you can read the membership also. Logically, India is also a member. China should be a member. Normally, Pakistan is not a member of these associations. Okay, some key takeaways now. So one they say is that lead share for 2024, making a case for India. Second, so that was there. Now moving to the points. Collaborative AI, right? So collaborative AI for global partnership among AI. So this was discussed. Second, equitable access to critical resources for AI research, innovation, and AI computing. So equitable access to critical resources. So that should be made available to all countries, not just a select few or a club of few countries, the privileged developed nations, but should be available to all. Next. Now, since India is leading this charge and all those things, India already is promoting DigiStack, the public infrastructure, digital infrastructure that it has created. And India is showcasing that they can provide this infrastructure, which is not hard, the IT. So this they can provide to other countries. So it brings India more legitimacy to India's DigiStack, which is also digital public infrastructure. Further, AI applications, only AI with respect to agriculture is mentioned over here. So access to risk proportionate, trustworthy AI applications for ensuring sustainable food production system. So how AI can be used for food production system and resilient agricultural practices. You know what? We can actually prepare a mains-based question on this. So yeah, so that's it actually, and promote focus on low and middle income countries to ensure a broad-based range of expertise, national and regional views, which is basically this only. Previously, we have studied that there should be a global institution for regulation of AI, so that we have discussed. And some of the other developments is the recent law of EU to regulate AI, which is based on a risk-based approach, unacceptable risk, high risk, middle risk, and low risk, right? So that list EU has prepared accordingly. That algorithm sharing and all this has to be done according to the risk. UK, we hear about light touch approach. Then US has an executive order wherein how the AI thing will be regulated, especially generative AI. And it's basically the developers are required to share their codes. So that is there. If required, the government can tell them to take down certain codes if it's controversial. Okay. Uh, and further, US came up with something known as Washington template. So that was there, which can be used by other countries. Then with UK, we had the Bletchley Park Declaration on AI, which basically talk about independent institution should be there. There should be a global framework on AI governance, all those issues. India, we don't know much. Seriously, we don't know much about India's case. All these with other countries are doing that we know more about. Okay. Export-oriented green hydrogen projects may get government's fiscal support. First of all, what is green hydrogen? So the concept is simple. With this water, we split it into hydrogen and oxygen, right? So we split it into it. Then we do a cold combustion or hot combustion. And with this, we get energy. Simple as that. So it is, this water is being split into hydrogen and oxygen using a process known as electrolysis. So electricity is required. If this electricity is coming from the green means, that is renewable energy, then it is known as green hydrogen. So there is black hydrogen, brown hydrogen, blue hydrogen. So there are different categories of hydrogen. So we're talking about green hydrogen, which is coming from renewables. Sometime back, don't get much from here. Sometime back, there was an article which said that green hydrogen companies in this business, they want fiscal support. Plus, they want import exemptions, especially when imports are coming from China for solar photovoltaic cells, as well as electrolysis equipments that they wanted subsidy. Now we hear if export oriented, that means SEZs, where the green hydrogen projects are there, so they should be getting fiscal support. Presently, SEZs having green hydrogen projects, but used for their own consumption or for captive consumption, they are exempted. They do not get fiscal subsidy, but this may be included. Captive consumption may also be included. Okay, US Federal Reserve Bank keeps interest rates unchanged at 5.2, whatever that rate is. The thing is that if the US Federal Bank increases rate, there is outflow of foreign currency from India to abroad, USA. So this is a good thing. And when that outflow takes place, dollar appreciates, rupee depreciates. This is the COP28. It's a summary that is there. I've already shared it with you on the Telegram, right? In a shorter way. So that is there. So that's it from today's news analysis. Thank you for streaming into our channel, IS Primers, with me, Shubhashish. Bye-bye. All the best.